everybody, welcome to the show. My name is Amanda Ostrander. I am a teacher-turned-homeschool mom, and this is Raising A to Z, a place where we talk about all things homeschooling. And today, I'm going to talk about exactly how long the school day is for my homeschoolers. So I got this question recently, and I actually get it kind of on a fairly regular basis. People message, DM, comment, what does the school portion of your day as a homeschooler look like? Like, how long is that? And I think the reason I get it is because we are so conditioned as a society that a school day should be from 9 until 3 at least, sometimes longer depending on where you live, that it feels wrong that your day is less than that, or that your day is significantly shorter. And it is. As homeschoolers, one of the great benefits is that our days are shorter. Our kids do just as much schoolwork, if not more sometimes, but their day is significantly shorter. And there's a lot of reasons for that. First off, there's things like there's less distractions in your house versus at school. There's less interruptions. There's no, you don't have to take pep rallies and fire drills. You don't have to do gather as many books. You don't have to change classrooms. There's a lot less distractions that are happening. There's a lot less interruptions. And the other thing that happens a lot that you see is you don't have to wait. So there's a lot less dead time. So you're not waiting for a teacher to come in because that teacher is a math teacher and they only teach math. There's not that kind of transition time that's a dead time. There's no waiting for other students to finish up. So if you have 30 kids, often you do have to wait for, until they're almost all done, at least 95% of them. So if you're one of the first kids done, you might be waiting 15, 20 minutes until the last kid is done. And so you don't have that kind of huge amount of waiting time. You're not spending the time passing out workbooks and picking up workbooks, which I don't think people realize takes a massive amount of time. It's on average, I would say it's 3 to 5 minutes to pass out workbooks or textbooks at the beginning of a class. And then it's another 5 minutes to collect them at the end of class, because kids are kids and it just takes so much longer. So there's a lot of dead time that happens in school, and it's, there's a lot of wasted time, and it's not that it's the school's fault. It's just that's what happens when you have 30 kids and you're trying to get all of them on the same page. And so school days as homeschoolers take a lot less time because we have removed a lot of those distractions. We have less kids in our class. We have kind of more control over our schedule. So we don't have to, we're not moving around as much. We can pick a spot and sit. We just have our own workbooks. We're not passing out workbooks to anybody. There's a lot of things that just make homeschooling so much more time efficient. And the other thing I totally didn't even mention is that you're not having to reteach the same things again and again and again, even if your kid gets it. That's a huge thing that takes away a lot of time. If you have a kid who's really struggling to understand the different kinds of triangles, you might have to teach that as a lesson to the group 3-4 days in a row. And the kid who got the first day is having to sit through that lesson again and again and again. And, that's, 15, 20 minutes of their math class that's being taken up by reteaching when they could have, they learned it the first day. So there's a lot of things that make homeschooling more time efficient. And that means that our day is a lot shorter. And it does make us nervous as homeschoolers that we're not doing enough, because when your typical school day, here in Ontario, a typical school day is scheduled to be 300 instructional minutes. That doesn't include lunch breaks or anything like that, but it's 300 instructional minutes. And then your day takes less than half of that. It does make people nervous, but it doesn't mean that you're not covering as much, if not more, than the public school system. So I'm going to go through what my typical school day kind of looks like with my 2nd and 4th grader and how long that takes us. First thing, we get up, I go for a walk. My husband's still here. They watch cartoons. We have breakfast. We do a typical morning routine, right? The only difference is our morning routine wraps up at 8:45, when most kids are already at school. Starting at 8:45, we have an alarm set on the iPad, which is where my kids watch cartoons. And when that alarm goes off, they turn off their iPad and it is time to start the day. And if you have a kid who's obsessed with like iPads and stuff, like, or cartoons or whatever, timers are great. Timers are fantastic. So that we have a timer on the iPad. Once it goes off, it signals to both my kids that it's time to start the day. And so they go and they get started, and they go get dressed, they brush their teeth, they comb their hair, and they make their way to the dining room table where we get started for the day. And in that time, I pull out my planner and first off, I make sure that I'm ready. So whether that is finishing getting dressed, throwing my hair up in a bun, grabbing a cup of tea, like whatever it is that I need to do to get myself ready, I'm sitting down and I'm going to pull out my planner and I'm going to kind of look through what the plan for the day is. If you're like, oh, a planner, maybe I should invest in one. If you're looking for a really great one, let me introduce you to the Essential Homeschool Planner. These planners are planners that I designed. They are fantastic planners. They have everything that you need to keep your day organized. They have really nice big squares where you can write in what subject you're doing. You can do it by kid. They are great for planning from behind too, if that's something that you prefer to do. But it has things like field trip planners, curriculum lists, unit study planners, all the things that you need as a homeschool parent to stay on top of things. The Essential Homeschool Planner has those, and they come as a PDF, or they come in some really amazing covers, like this beautiful like pink and purple cloud. There's also like a night sky, there's a rainbow, there's all kinds of fantastic covers, and they're all available on Amazon, so they ship directly to you pronto. I pull out my planner, I go through what I'm doing for the day, and kind of just check through what we had planned. So the goal is to have us sit back down at the table at 9 a.m. Being realistic, that's usually closer to 9:15. It is, but like the goal is generally 9 a.m. But life happens. So when we sit down, the first thing we do is our morning basket. I have a whole video on what is in my morning basket this year. I'll put a link over here. But basically we sit down, the kids have they do some coloring, they have a couple different little like puzzle games that they like to play. They're playing those things, busy hands, while I go through and do some of the other activities with them. So we do some geography, we do some word of the day, we do some poetry, we do a whole bunch of like things that get our brains working and awake, but also cover a little bit of different topics and different subjects. And they're listening, they're interacting, they're talking with us. Lexi likes to read our fun fact book. And so that takes us maybe 15 minutes, give or take. The other thing that happens after morning basket is we do our morning reading. This varies. So it depends on what we have to get through for the day. So sometimes it's just a picture book. Sometimes if we're working on like a novel, when I get the book, I determine how many chapters or what we need to finish each week. So I'll go through and check like how many chapters we have to do. So sometimes depending on the book, like a small book, it might just be one chapter. A bigger book, we might be doing 2 or 3 a day. So it varies, but usually ends up being sometimes it's like one chapter of a book, one picture book. It varies. But generally our reading time that I'm reading aloud to the kids and we're all interacting and talking about the book, it's going to be about 15 to 20 minutes. And the whole time they're coloring, they're playing, they're listening and asking questions, talking, reacting to the books and all that, but their hands are busy. It's very key. So that is the first thing we do. Then we move into our unit studies. And this takes us about 30 minutes. First off, pro tip. I'm going to give you 2 pro tips. One, I only do one subject at a time in terms of like history, geography, science, social studies, all those kinds of things. I only do one at a time. And the main reason is A, I'm not recreating the school system, so I don't need to like cover everything every single day or even every single week. And B, it's just a lot more feasible for me as a homeschool parent to handle one subject at a time. So for example, the month of September, we did space, which is science. And so I just got books for space and I just got that's what we did. We did space. That's all I handled. October, we're going to do a little bit of history. We're going to do some Viking stuff. So all my library books, all my resources, everything that I've pulled to have ready and accessible to me, that all the science stuff goes away, and I'll go and get all my like Viking books and library books and all that, and that's right there with me. I find it's a lot more feasible to like focus on one subject because I'm only planning like one unit at a time. I also find it's just easier to get the resources kind of together, and I'm not like trying to have resources for 4 different subjects. And I just find it's much easier for us to focus in and kind of go deeper and wider when we're focused on one subject. So I only teach one at a time. I highly recommend you try it because it really does alleviate some stress of like bouncing from subject to subject and making sure you're covering everything. We do a month of science, a month of history, a month of science, a month of geography, a month of science, a month of history again. And we get just as much covered as the public school system in terms of topics, if not more. I actually cover more topics usually than the public school system does. So that's pro tip number 1. Pro tip number 2 that I always tell people is if you're going to do any learning that is as a family, do it first. So for us, because we do our unit studies as a family, we do that first. So as soon as our morning baskets is done, we do our unit studies, and then they move on to their individual subjects, which would be like their math is they have their own levels of math. They have their own levels of language. The reason being that from experience that I find this works better is that we used to do it the opposite when they were really little. And that became really problematic because like, let's say Zoe only had to do 1 page of phonics writing and 1 page of like numbers, right? And Alexi was doing like 2 pages of phonics and 2 pages of math. Well, who finishes earlier? Zoe. Alexi's then still trying to finish up and Zoe goes and starts playing. Well, then it's really hard to rope Zoe back in to come back to a lesson, and Alexi's annoyed that she didn't get to play. So I find it was just so much easier when we switched. It's been like a game changer that we do all of our stuff as a family together, and then they can go to their individual subjects. So whoever is done first just moves on to the next task. So we're not trying to wrangle kids back to the table afterwards, and it's been much easier. Like I said, unit study is right after morning basket. It's about 30 minutes by the time I do some readings and we do an activity and we talk about things, and it ends up being about 30 minutes. And then we move on to language. This is typically like our phonics, our spelling, our grammar work. That's going to take anywhere from, depending on what the activity is, 15 to 20 minutes. Especially if it's just workbook stuff. If there's a lesson, it might take a few extra minutes, but typically we're running around 20 minutes for language. But again, that's just like the spelling, grammar, phonics. We've already done reading and like novel study kind of stuff. That's already happened in the reading section right after our morning basket. So we've already done some reading. We've already done that kind of stuff. So now we're just into like the writing section of language. So that, like I said, takes about 20 minutes. After that, we move into math, which I say takes anywhere, it takes about 20 minutes if they're focused. Because let's be honest, sometimes they're not. 20 minutes is pretty average for us. Sometimes it's closer to 30, but 20 minutes is pretty average. And they're both working at different levels for math. So they're doing different activities. I sit in the middle. There's one on each side. And I try to give them their independence as much as possible and then help as needed. So they're doing, whoever finishes first gets to move on to, they get the first round of their independent studies, which is, after their like formal sit down lessons, they have independent study, which is things like piano practice, Duolingo. Zoe does her speech therapy during that time. And so basically we have this rule that whoever is done first goes and does piano practice first. That's just how it works. And then they make sure the Duolingo is done, their speech therapy is done, and then we move on to chores. So, and then after chores, they're done. So like really, independent study takes them it's about 10 minutes for Duolingo, 10 minutes for piano-ish, 10, 15 minutes for practice. And then Zoe's speech therapy takes about 10 minutes. So that's another half an hour. So if we add all of that up, our whole day, we're usually wrapping up all of the learning of our day by about 11 a.m. and then we do chores. So if we start at 9, which like I said, we really rarely do. Usually it's closer to 9:15, 9:20. But like if we're doing a full day from 9 until 11, then that's 2 hours or 120 minutes, which is less than half of the instructional time that is taught in like Ontario schools, which is 300 minutes. But we covered just as much, if not more, as the public schools did. We just didn't have all of the interruptions. We didn't have all the waiting. And it was just done more time efficiently. So like I said, our typical day right now for homeschooling my 2 kids, grade 2 and grade 4, is taking about 2 hours on average. Usually a little bit less than that. Like 2 hours would be like the longest that it typically takes. And that is if there's a little bit of lollygagging happening in the middle of that, because, you know, kids are kids. And I only do that 4 days a week. Like that's covering a lot in 4 days a week. So, Fridays, we don't do morning basket. Some Fridays we'll do reading. We don't do a full morning basket. We do some reading and then we'll do spelling test and then we're done for the day, just because they need to have 4 days of practice before they're ready for their spelling test. But so yeah, that's Friday's a little bit different, but like our typical homeschool day is less than 2 hours and we're getting just as much done as public school system. So if you're like, I feel like we're spending too long, we're spending too much time, then maybe consider doing something different and having a change. And if you're like, hey, our day is 3 hours, awesome. As your kids get older, your days are going to get longer as you introduce more subjects or your activities take longer. Like obviously writing an essay is going to take a lot longer than, you know, writing a sentence. You know what I mean? So depending on the activity, things can change, but currently that is what our day looks like. I want to tell you that it's okay if your day is shorter. It is normal and you are doing a great job. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe and click the bell to get notifications. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok so you can see what a regular day looks like for us on a regular basis. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye.